Hello and welcome to Trying Times. Actually, more importantly, Happy New Year. I'm so excited to be back with this show in a new year and in a new chapter because I think in my mind this is like the second chapter of Trying Times, which is really cool because this time last year this show was actually just an idea that was sort of being worked on and wasn't totally put out there yet. Like it was more so something that was just living on my computer's hard drive and in my imagination a little bit. But now it's out there and it's real and it's like a tangible thing that I've gotten to work with and on for over a year, and that's so special to me. So thank you for being here, for helping me turn this into a small but mighty community, and for listening to my embarrassing stories. I think this year is going to be one that is hopefully filled with even more of all of that. So a big thank you to you. But more importantly, back to you. Hello, how are you? I hope you've had a really wonderful holiday season and a great start to the new year. I know for me, like I've personally really enjoyed spending time with my family and just relaxing. And a big thing I've been trying to do a lot more lately is just practice gratitude, because that's a very important thing that I think I forget pretty often. So just as we entered the new year, I sort of reflected on what I was grateful for and what I am grateful for. I think it's a really grounding practice, and I find that generally the way we often live now, like through our phones, through computer screens, TV screens, whatever of that sort, we're kind of in like a digital orb in a way. Not to get too intense on you here, but I feel like it's like a little bit of a online bubble that we live in, or a news bubble that we live in. Like it's always like we're kind of just being receptive of whatever's being thrown at us. And honestly, it makes sense that we live that way because there's so much out there. And I think from that, we forget what's truly important to us and what truly matters and holds very heavy importance. And I think we tend to look past those really special things that we do have, or the fact that, like many of us can say we are grateful for the fact that we have a roof over our heads, or that we have a family, or that we have food on our plate, that we have a full stomach. Like, I think things of that caliber in my mind are what I'm talking about a little bit more than like, I'm very happy that I got this sweater for myself. And also, I don't know what your story is. Like, if you worked very hard to save and be able to get a sweater that you really wanted for yourself or something else, like that's incredible too. Don't let this downplay that. That's not what I'm saying. But I think just trying to kind of go back to like what you're grateful for and finding that real gratitude is really important, because I think we tend to forget it because everything is just so fast now. So for this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and the ways in which we live in this race to relevance, kind of, because it's something that's often being portrayed as glamorous or is being shared so often that we actually just kind of get sucked into it pretty easily. And I think what I mean by that is like the whole existence of social media in a way. Like, we often live through screens and see things through screens. We interpret things through screens. But also, I think what we forget a lot of the time is we only ever see snippets of an entire story. And that's really important to know, because I think a lot of us start to live in a certain way based off of that, based off of social media. And it's very easy to do as well. Like, don't get me wrong, it's very easy to put that into perspective and be like, yeah, this is like what matters to me. This is what I care about. Like, this is bringing me joy. This is bringing me confidence. This is like whatever it may be. I think there's so much that comes from that. So that's kind of where I wanted to tie that into today's episode. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the types of platforms that existed when I was in high school. Because from what I remember, and like from people in my age group and my own growing up experience, that was like sort of the surge of everything coming up and what like people around my age knew best. Like before my generation, there was things like MySpace. I know that. I'm not well versed in that, nor can I honestly say I had a MySpace page, so I can't really include that in this, but just know if you were a MySpace user, I hear you. I wish I understood it better. But yeah, no, so I feel like that's what I really remember though, of like my age group and like myself really getting into social media. At the time, I think it was like the very first thing I can remember, and I'm not going in any particular order here, but the very first platform I remember was Tumblr, and it was a really big thing. This was almost like our version of MySpace, I think, because it was what we used to express ourselves and almost pretty much use this as our own branded website for all the things we liked. So I think there were different like eras that existed through Tumblr too, because I mean, there was the era where you like connected with people that you didn't really know. There was the era where you use this place as like Ask FM. I don't know if you guys remember that, where people would like ask each other questions anonymously usually. That was a really heavy thing through Tumblr at one point from what I remember. So there was that. Then there was like the era of like just like hipsterville, I feel. And like music was heavily tied into that. So specifically the Neighborhood, Arctic Monkeys, Lana Del Rey, like they were all really taking over everyone's dashboards from what I remember at that time, which were like our homepage, main feed types of things. So yeah, there was that. And then there was Twitter, where everyone communicated and almost probably posted like too many statuses and like random updates, but it was just, I think, the thing. And it took a while before we could integrate images or videos into tweets from what I remember. So it was kind of just like strictly small blurbs of text. And then I think just began to evolve slowly but surely. But it was like the it thing at the time. It was almost like a modern day MSN in a way, if you remember that. Like we were just out here doing the most with it. I remember like DMs were a huge thing. So you could obviously talk privately with someone else and then you could post like tweets or you share your statuses, like whatever you want to call it. I feel so old saying this. You could post your tweets and share your statuses. You could share tweets with all of your followers, and if you had like a private account only your followers saw, obviously you understand this concept. I don't need to explain it to you, but it was just like a really big thing at the time. And I remember being able to follow like my favorite musicians on here as one of like the OG apps, and still even up until like 5 to 6 years ago, it was kind of the place to be able to chat with these people. And I remember that was a huge subculture on there too. And it was like a really exciting thing for everyone because it made you feel a lot more connected to the people that you might idolize, you might be a fan of, the people that you might want to work with eventually. Like it opened a lot of doors in that way and kind of blurred the lines of what was actually possible in terms of interaction versus like what we might think is possible. So that was a really interesting thing as well. So after that came Facebook, which immediately it was like everyone hopped from Twitter to there because it was more detailed. There was so much more you could do. And there was also this random era similar to Tumblr, now that I think about it, where like people would just randomly add you, or that you would randomly add people that you didn't actually know. Like you would just add them as a friend even though you didn't know them. And I don't know why this was a phase. Like this could expand in terms of, let's say you're in high school, you add someone who goes to a high school not far from yours, but they don't go to the same school as you. You might not know them. They could just be like a mutual friend or a friend of a friend of a friend, but you're like, you know what, this person seems cool, so I'm just going to add them. That was a really big thing. But it could also expand as far as like, you could add someone from the other side of the world. You could add someone from Australia on there and connect with literally anyone, which was really interesting to think about. And I genuinely have no idea why this was a thing, but I can almost guarantee it probably came with some very interesting stories for many people. I think, for one, like I just think of the show Catfish, which I genuinely enjoy. So there's a really great example of that. It was such a heavy subculture from that sort of a social platform that it literally evolved into a show and a term in itself that people now use worldwide. So I think that's really interesting. And then in the mix of all of those things, all of those apps, all those platforms, there was Vine. This place was magical. Like, I miss Vine so much. The whole concept of this app was just that you'd post videos that were no longer than 6 seconds. So it sort of compiled with like almost in a way Twitter's earlier structure of being able to say whatever you want, but within a limit. So in this aspect, a 6-second limit, which was very interesting. People were getting very creative. People were kind of just posting anything and everything. And I honestly miss it so much. Like now we have TikTok and I love TikTok, but at the same time, it's like, I think, unless I'm remembering it wrong, I feel like TikTok initially was like 10 seconds, right? It was like a maximum cutoff at some seconds. It was definitely not 30 seconds though. Like it was less than, I know that much. And then quickly it evolved to have these updates where you were able to post videos that were like 30 seconds and then a minute and then 3 minutes and then 5 minutes. And now I think you can post on there up to like 10 minutes. So sometimes I'm on there just scrolling and I never think about this. Like, I don't think a lot of people do, where you're just watching a video and sometimes it doesn't feel that long, but you could literally be sitting there watching a video for 5 minutes that you have no interest in or that you didn't want to see, or like, like it's crazy how quick we are to lend our time. And I think that's what makes that app very successful because we don't realize how quick it is. But 6 seconds was a whole different era. It was literally like bite size, bite size, bite size over and over. Whereas now we get a good mix of like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 10 minutes. Like it's very mixed and jumbled in there, which I do like. And at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this, but that was a whole other separate tangent. After Facebook, I remember Instagram became a thing. And when I was in, I think, grade 10, Instagram became a thing. So Facebook popped up when I was in like grade 6 or 7. It was a huge jump and it was like a really exciting thing because this app sort of came in and I feel like slowly but surely changed the game overall. So this thing had so much more detail and so many more options for users than any other social media sites did at the time. And it wasn't totally like that at first, but it evolved in many ways to sort of overcome every other platform that was out there. And I think it's still very much trying to do that, which is a very interesting thing, I think. But I think the biggest thing at the time was just being able to see how our lives were shifting with each and every platform that was coming out at the time. Because the ways in which social media and this digital culture began to morph from being simply online only to existing in our actual real lives was very heavy, I think. And I'm trying to think. So for instance, a thing like memes happened so fast. I don't even know when, but it just happened at a really fast rate because it was something that moved from platform to platform and began to actually exist in different forms of slang. So the way we spoke was also then beginning to change. That was a huge thing I noticed. I think along with that, there was the whole concept of trends that came along. And this happened in its own phases from what I can remember as well, because there's always like a quote unquote popular aesthetic. And I feel like that translates so differently for each and every person. So trends existed across all these platforms too, but all in different ways. Like something could exist on Twitter as a meme and then translate to Facebook and Instagram in a different way and vice versa. So I think in that same sense, trends existing online were translating into our real lives in a very weird way, but like very organic too, which is so interesting because it's not like we're just looking at a magazine and being like, this is on trend and it's like the one thing. But now we're able to look at something like social media and be like, wow, there's so many things, which is cool and also terrifying at the same time, I think. So these concepts began to move into socializing in a way too, because there were points in time from what I remember, and I remember it so well, where people were just taking so many photos, either from their phones, webcams, digital cameras, like whatever it was, and just uploading away on Facebook or something like that. And I think that later on evolved into these sort of like casual and impromptu photo shoots that friends would have. So you just like hang out with a group of friends and take a crap ton of photos, and then you'd edit the photos, upload them, and then that would be kind of how you're like sharing with the world, or at least your circle of people, that you were out having a good time. Even later on, this became more so the norm with Instagram, especially because it was like just primarily a photo-based app. Except the one thing I noticed was that these photos were beginning to become like higher in quality, like these photo shoots per se, and things weren't so impromptu. So it was becoming more planned, more, I think, concentrated and curated and less casual. Because the way I saw it was that Instagram was really like this great app for so many people, but especially for photographers to showcase their work. And obviously that's going to be of a higher caliber and higher quality. So I think in some ways it made that connection similar to Twitter to artists feel less far away and more tangible. Like you could legitimately DM someone and most likely be able to actually talk to them. I don't know so much that it's that way now, but it was easier before. So I think that's shifted a lot. And then even further, this culture of influencers and creators came to fruition and became more populated. So there was just a lot more content being put out there. And generally, in terms of like influencers and creators, I think this is something that a lot of people have different takes on. For me personally, I think that job position is really fascinating. And if it's something that works for someone and it's connecting them to what they want to do, then I think that's amazing. And I think as long as someone isn't spreading a bad or negative message, it's a really great way to utilize these tools to advance your career and try something different and just continue to evolve. Because that's so cool to be able to say that you're able to try so many different things from one job. So I don't see anything wrong with it now. But again, currently in 2023, that feels very weird to say. It's totally different and more possible to work or manage a career in this aspect than it might have been in like 2009 or 2010. But it was always looked at as idealistic and glamorous because it was like this interesting concept of like that thing I kind of said of artists and musicians and all these people being on apps feeling suddenly not so far away to interact with. But now there was like this new thing of people that were very much like you that felt, normal and weren't necessarily making music, weren't necessarily actors, weren't necessarily writing books or scripts or whatever it may be, that were also beginning to kind of come into that similar light of those artists that we idolized so much. So it created a whole new subculture, a whole new career path, a whole new, so much came out of that, which is insane when you really sit down and think about it. I generally just find it interesting that along with this, there's so many parallels because people can lead the most wonderful life online. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying of this always being deemed as idealistic or glamorous. But I think the most important thing is that we'll never know how they're really feeling, like any of these people, or someone can be themselves online and feel comfortable in sharing that vulnerable side to their life. And then trolls come after them. There's always a really weird side to it. I don't know. I think generally as a very quick short message to go along with that, it always looks like the grass is greener on the other side. But I think the thing that I've noticed is that you never actually can know the whole story unless you actually know the person or are that person living in that very situation. There's also different sides to it all. It's inspiring, in my opinion, to see someone flourish at whatever age as they have a growing platform and can do whatever they feel the most confident in or want to do. I find that really interesting. And I think there's also people that feel the same or maybe feel not the greatest about themselves that see that as a threat or take that out on people online. So trolls, pretty much. But there's that world of comparison that lies in that every day, that everyday existence. We might not share that openly, but feel it deeply instead. I don't know. I think sometimes seeing someone potentially your age, younger than you, or even older than you can raise some unrealistic expectations because, again, you see someone thriving online and maybe compare that to your own life and feel as though you're suddenly not as proud of yourself or feel you're not doing enough. But it's a matter of a fact that this type of position is not an easy one to maintain. So the people that you're seeing who may look super ahead in life or whatever you want to say or whatever you want to call that or whatever those words may mean to you may have struggled greatly to get to where they are. They may even currently be struggling, but that's not the point. It's the point that we'll never know unless we're physically in that position ourselves. So that's the biggest thing I've learned about social media so far. And I think generally just going off of that, the way that we see everything is through a filter. I think that's really important to remember. We're only ever seeing glimpses into people's lives. And whether it's exciting or vulnerable, it's only ever what they want to allow themselves to share. And that's totally normal. I don't think everyone walks around wanting to share every single thing about themselves with every single person they meet because it just doesn't work that way, I don't think, all the time. And I think it makes sense that it would function the same way online as it does in the real world. So there's that whole tangent. Now, the biggest reason I wanted to get into this topic for this episode is because lately I've been thinking about this concept sort of nothing matters and not in a delusional way, but in the sense of things forever being temporary and that we need to really circle back on what we actually appreciate in our lives and what deserves real gratitude. Because a few months ago, Instagram had this whole storm happen where accounts were being deleted front, right, and center. I had a friend reach out to me that morning saying, oh my God, my account got deleted and I literally have no way of getting back into it. And I was nervous for her because I was just trying to suggest different methods of what she could try and nothing was working. And then lo and behold, I tried to open the app and my account for trying times yep, my account for this very show here was deleted. And I was so pissed. I felt so discombobulated, if you will, because I was just like, wow, this is like my main platform of how I connect with people aside from literally talking on this show, and it's gone. It's just disappeared. It's off the face of the earth. Something that I've worked on for months is just gone. And I didn't know what to do. And I pretty much just took to Twitter to find out what was going on, which I find hilarious, by the way, that we all go to Twitter as soon as something is off, specifically with Instagram, because we just know people will be talking about it on Twitter. So I went to Twitter, and then I saw on there that this was a very big thing happening for thousands of people that same day. So safe to say, I did get my account back. My friend did get her account back. We were able to let out a deep breath, and things were back to the way they were before. It was okay. We were doing all right. But in that instance, I was really stressed, and like it kind of made me sit back and just think, why am I so stressed all the time? This thing that means so much to me, and don't get me wrong, I still care and always will, but this thing was instantly just taken away and off the face of the earth. Not like the actual show, thankfully, but the sort of connective aspect and platform that I had for it. So that was a really weird and sort of eye-opening moment for me too. And it made me realize, like, we weigh so much importance of, our own lives, maybe of our appearance, whatever it may be, our milestones on these apps. And it just kind of made me think, why do we allow these platforms to have such a heavy impact on our lives? And I don't mean this in an ignorant way, because this is a huge thing that's involved in the way we work as a world now. And that I totally understand. But it was generally a very reflective and eye-opening moment for me to realize this isn't something that reflects me as a person. So I thought about that a lot. I thought about the fact that, like, this thing that I clearly in some way hold heavy importance to is glitching out. It's removing things, and that's so crazy. It's just such a signifier of how temporary a lot of things in life are. So for instance, I guess a good way to reframe it is something that is stressing you right now. And obviously I'm not trying to downplay anything, but it could be something very minor that feels very major. And obviously if this is something related to like health, family, something of that caliber, I don't want to downplay that. I can't speak for your exact experience right now. But what I do want to say is something that you feel like is like totally just rocking your entire world right now and might be making you feel like crap and making you feel low might not even matter to you in a week. It might not matter to you in a month. It might not even matter to you like tomorrow. But thinking of it in the grand scheme of things, it's very temporary. Next year, you'll think back and be like, why was I worried about that? So that's a really interesting way of getting yourself to kind of reframe things and sit down and think about things that you actually feel gratitude towards and you feel grateful for and you're thankful for. So yeah, I don't know. I thought about that a lot in the last couple of months, but I really want to share that. And I guess I kind of want to leave you with a question too. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I hope you don't mind. But one, do you feel like you place a lot of your own importance within these apps? And then kind of a sub question from there. If so, why do you feel like it's deserving of your person as a whole in a way? Like, what about that makes you feel like your entire personality or your appearance, whatever it may be, should be based off of that? Interested to know that. And then if not, if you don't feel that way, what about it feels unimportant to you? Is it just that maybe you don't have the time for it? Maybe you enjoy being like out there in real life a little bit more and not maybe documenting it as much as others. Yeah, just that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it. I feel like we're just sort of in a race all the time, and we live in and lead a very fast-paced life. And in some ways, I do think that concept of social media contributes to that heavily. And I guess my final note is kind of like, there's things like TikTok now where you could be viral and you could have a video of yours go like crazy and get like millions of views, hundreds of thousands of likes, and then the next day it's just like gone. Not that it's gone, but like the next day you might not have that same feedback, and that's fine. But it's really, really crazy how fast the world is moving, and I think how quickly we jump to want to do things sometimes based off of social media. Not everyone, I can't speak for everyone, but it is becoming a very predominant thing. So that's something I wanted to leave you with. And before I fully wrap this episode up, I wanted to tell you that there are a few different ways that you can be involved in trying times. So if you want to answer these questions for real, like you could actually message me about them, or there's a whole other option. I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, you could be involved in the show, which is super exciting stuff. So there's a couple of different ways, and ironically enough, the first option I'm going to mention is through social media. So you know what? Thankfully, with these kinds of platforms, I'm able to connect with cool people like yourself and actually have a place to share trying times, like aside from the actual show. So the first thing is that there's an Instagram for the show that you can check out. Follow if you like. And also, you can chat with me there, which is cool. So you can DM me, answer these questions, just say, hey, what's up? Anything. I'd be down to chat. So go ahead and do that. There's also a Facebook page that exists out there. So if you want to check that out, you can. It's basically the Instagram page, but it's just on Facebook. I don't know how else to word that. But yeah, you could message me there if you want. I don't know. If you're still with the Facebook times, nothing wrong with that. That's cool. And then finally, the other way you can connect with me here is by leaving me a voicemail, just like you would if we were on the phone. And to all my good friends who know and deal with this, I love you. But if you don't know, I basically live with my phone in do not disturb mode. So it just automatically goes into voicemail. And I have like a list of like my favorite contacts. So if they call, the call will come through. But like otherwise, like it just goes to voicemail. So, you know, it just does that. And no offense or shade to anyone. I just apparently don't like notifications. So yeah, I just live in that mode. But basically, I guess on here, funny enough, it could basically be that I live in the same mode. So you can leave me a voicemail or a voice message, whatever you want to call that, and I can actually share that in an upcoming episode if you like. So to do that, you just go to the link in the episode description and click where it says leave me a voice message and then start recording. And that's that. So I hope to hear from you soon. Again, thank you so much for listening to this episode and tuning into Trying Times. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful, happy new year. We'll chat soon again, okay? Bye.